You once said that a great worship leader must be a great actor. What exactly do you mean by that? What did you mean by that?
Good actors, great actors, the best actors don't just show you what sad looks like. They actually do the emotional work to be sad.
Welcome to Side Stage. This is for the people behind the moment. Clark Beckham said something in this episode that sounds polarizing, but it's true. Great worship leaders don't perform emotion, they become it. This conversation is the why and the how. Let's get into it. Guys, we got Clark Beckham joining us. Thank you so much for being here, Clark. I'd like to start these out with just a little bit of an intro on who you are, how you got to where you're at. So, record label recently signed. You were part of 12 Vocals that did the Tommy Prophet kind of collaboration.
Yep.
And then also are massively influential, just the nastiest music theory I've seen. How did you first know that this is where you would end up? What was that first indication of, oh, I'm probably going to do this for, the rest of my life?
Oh man, there's a couple points there. There's a time where I thought, I think I could be here, as in like right now what I'm doing. And there's also a separate time where I thought, oh, I'm gonna do this for the rest of my life. And the most important one was the latter. I took music as a hobby for my childhood through like middle school, high school, even when I got to college. Pursuing music was the goal, but it was more like, yeah, if it happens, cool. If it doesn't, whatever. And then there was a moment that all changed, and it went from cool if it happens to it has to happen. And I am a slave to this calling now, which is just music and making music and performing and singing and playing and writing and that thing. And
Mm.
that moment was I was playing at a battle of the bands at Lee University, which is where I went to college, graduated from. I think I was a sophomore, and I'd played around, and I'd like made up kind of like just a conglomeration of my friends had made up a band, and we'd play at little events, and it was really fun, and I loved it. But I'd never really rehearsed and prepared super well for a performance and then performed. Battle of the Bands, there was a competition now element, and there were some people that were kinda talking trash about me and the band. And there were a lot of, because 'cause we'd played around a lot of people were like, "Oh, Clark and his band, like, they're the favorites, I guess, to win." And then the other bands didn't like that, so they started talking trash, and then we just had a whole new level of, um, motivation to do really well, and so we actually rehearsed multiple days, which we'd never done. It was just like show up, jam band. And then this time we picked the songs, we rehearsed, and we were super tight, and the musicians are freakazoids. They're still to this day my first call, all of them, when I need a a band, and I'm in Nashville, and I'm around amazing players and musicians. I still haven't found anybody better than these guys. So I had this monster band, well rehearsed, and we played, and I remember the sensation that came,
Hmm.
the experience of playing with a full band, playing like R&B, soul stuff, and what that felt like. And I remember walking off the stage when we finished, and everyone was going crazy, and it was like a great environment too. And I remember very specifically looking to my keyboard player, Marcus Wiles, who's still a professional player now here in Nashville. And I remember almost like vibrating with all the energy. And I said, how can we do that and then get a job doing anything else?
Hmm.
That's it. There's no going back. Like, how can we possibly? It's almost like you hear people say, like, I've experienced God so deeply. How could I go back now that I've seen him, that I've known him, that I've felt him? Like, how could I possibly go back? It's kind of how I felt with this musical experience. And then it was like, all right, um, I'll be homeless if I have to be. Like, there's no choice. There's no way. I've tasted and seen the goodness of this band and what it feels like uh, to do this at a high level. I can never. go back. So that was really the most important moment of this is when I knew this is when I knew that I'll be successful or have a career or have a social media following or get gigs. That is all almost worthless. Like, doesn't really
Hmm.
matter because really what matters was the time I made the decision that no matter what the outcome, this is what I'm doing.
You hear it so much for in the entrepreneurial world, or if you just want to be really good at your craft. If you set out to like accomplish a following or make a bunch of money, generally you never do that thing. But if you set out to impact and bring a gift to the world or add value to the world, all of those other things, it's almost like I'm reminded by that verse in Matthew. It's like, seek first the kingdom of heaven, and all these things will be added to you. This is not name it and claim it prosperity gospel, but it's almost like that contrast that you see in your life. It's like you didn't really set out to have a social media following or get gigs or do all the things. It was that experience in that moment that was like, man, I feel like I've seen the mountaintop. How could I ever do anything else? Would you say that that's pretty accurate?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the driving factor. Everything else comes after that. And there is strategy and there are goal setting moments of where like I do need to really focus on social media. What does that look like? But all of that is fueled by the single decision, that moment I had when I was 20 at the university at the Upsilon Greek Club Battle of the Bands with Neiman Davis, Austin Goodloe, Austin Arnwine, and Marcus Wiles, and we played. Um, the last song we played was "Satisfaction" by Alan Stone, and that was it. Everything changed.
You mentioned something in that you're like, well, we never really rehearsed. I want to contrast how much of it was a relentless pursuit of your craft, and then how much of it was natural gifting that you had seen over the years.
Yeah, good question. It's certainly both. You've got a lot of people that are born with talent, and then they never level up from that talent. They just ride that through, which is fine. Like, they usually just won't have a career because a career you have to have a lot of drive and perseverance and diligence. And if you don't, that's that's fine. Like, you'll just rock at karaoke night, you know? And like your friends will like convince you to sing in front of people every once in a while and you'll have this beautiful voice or you'll be able to play really well and be this really cool like party trick or just hobby, and that's sweet. What a
Mm,
gift to have that. But if you really wanna if it's like if it's something you wanna pursue with your life, like it was for me when I had that moment, then you have to get better, and it's different, like, be better for the motivation if you're, like, a worship leader on a stage, like, that has its own things, like, now
mm,
you're responsible for leading a congregation in right alignment with God, which is a big deal, versus singing on a different stage, the motivations could be different, but for me, when I see the miraculous phenomenon that is music, music makes no sense. Like,
100%.
why would these 2 notes sound awesome together, and then these 2 notes sound horrible together?
Mm,
They're just frequencies, it's just noise. Why does it sound so good? Why does this specific pattern of beats together of a kick and a snare and a hi-hat feel so good and make you move? That doesn't make any sense, just sound.
mm.
And so when you attribute all of this noise as a miraculous gift from God, then all of a sudden you're not getting better to be better. You're seeing like, man, this is a piece of God, the creator. And the harder I work, the more I'm going to experience of him.
Mm.
It's almost, this isn't a great analogy, but it's almost like if you, if you are watching a television show and the sound is like muffled and your TV screen is like so dirty you can barely see, like you can kind of see shapes,
Mm.
and you kind of watch this show for a second and you're like, ooh, this is really, really good. you're probably gonna clean the screen so you can actually see the definition. You're probably gonna get new speakers or fix the speakers. You're gonna make pursuits to see this show more clearly. Or maybe you're hiking and you see this beautiful view, and then it's like, wow, this is gorgeous. Oh man, there's another cliff up here I can climb up and see it from a even better perspective. When you see how beautiful the gift of music is
Mm.
and whose it is, that it's his creation, it's not ours. We didn't come up with it. We discovered it like a hiker would discover a view, but it is a gift straight from God that is a miracle. Then it's, oh, I want to sing on pitch because that's what the music's supposed to be. The gift of music sounds the best and gives that oh my gosh, this feels so good. It has this effect. It's in line with with this miraculous
Mm.
gift when it's on pitch better than when it's not. And then that's where you're trying to get better is so you can experience his gift the best possible way.
You mentioned something about leading worship being so much different than performing in a whole different conversation. I've seen a lot of worship leaders think that their biggest problem is skill. And I really believe something that comes before skill, especially in worship, is authenticity. And that's a huge a buzzword right now. But I feel like it's really easy, the more talented you are, for leaders to forget the why behind why they started. That said, you once said that a great worship leader must be a great actor. And I know that's polarizing for some people to hear that. What exactly do you mean by that? What did you mean by that?
Yeah, so even hearing you say that, like, triggers stuff in me, like, "What? No." Even though, like, that's you're just quoting me. The statement
It
sounds
might be a little bit out of context,
no
it's good.
well well, of course it is, but, like, it's true.
Yeah.
It's still very true, and what I mean by that is, um and when I actually took acting classes and have been pursuing acting, like, kind of, like, not undercover, but just like underground acting pursuit, like during this whole time that I'm doing music as well. And I'm taking these really high level classes with incredible actors and teachers and coaches. I had a sad scene where I was supposed to be sad, and she stopped me almost immediately. It's like that. Don't show me what sad looks like. Be sad. Because if I try to show her what I think should look like on my face, people are gonna know I'm pretending and that they're not gonna believe anything in the scene.
Mm,
That's a bad actor. Good actors, great actors, the best actors don't just show you what sad looks like. They actually do the emotional work to be sad, and they're sad, and then they
mm,
do the scene, and they're imagining themselves in that position of what the song is saying, or sorry, what the scene is saying. So what she said, "Don't show me what sad looks like, be sad."
mm,
And it's the same thing with worship leaders when we get up on stage in the morning. We know we can't be blank. We know that. I don't think there's any worship leader that's passionate about the craft or even semi-passionate about worship leading that thinks that going up with just a blank face, no energy at all is acceptable. So in that case, we have two options when we go on stage and we're singing. Usually the first song is very up tempo and joyful. Like, so let's say we're singing The Joy of the Lord is My Strength, but that morning you don't feel very joyful and you don't feel very strong. In that moment, you have two options. You can pretend, you can show what you think the joy of the Lord looks like on your face and in your body to the congregation, or you can do what great actors do, which is actually think back, take the time to do the emotional work of, "Why should I have the joy of the Lord? What is the joy of the Lord?" Well, when I think about where I would be without the guidance of biblical decrees and principles
mm,
and an upbringing in like following the Bible and what it says, and then me reading and understanding and praying and dying to self in my marriage, dying to self in everyday life, where my marriage would be, where my life would be without him. And there are a lot of people who don't have that. I heard
Mm.
my pastor, Pastor Alex Seeley at The Belonging said this Sunday, she said, "I was just thinking how grateful I am to know Jesus." And at first I was like, "Yeah, okay, cool." And then she's like, "A lot of my family is not saved. They don't know Jesus. And I'm so glad that I do." And then I thought like, "Oh my goodness, there's so many people that I know that really don't know Jesus in a way that shapes their life and changes their life. And I'm so glad that I do." Oh, okay. Now I can sing "The Joy of the Lord is my strength," because I've gone through this whole dialogue with myself and this inner thought of, "Oh my goodness, I am so grateful to know Jesus. And I'm so grateful to know the truth that all things work for the good of those who are called and are called according to the purpose and those who love him." I'm so grateful to know that he's an ever present help in time of need. And I remember when he's been that and he's never left me. Even when I felt alone, he's always there and he's been guiding me. And you walk through your testimony, you walk through scriptures, you walk through things that really mean something to you. Now go sing.
Mm.
Now you don't have to pretend, you don't have to, and I think a lot of times people put on this, I think they misuse the sacrifice of praise scripture to just put on a face.
Mm.
Well, I don't feel like it, but I'm gonna give him praise anyway. That's great. You don't feel like it. Make sure you're not just a shell of a person when you're singing. Um, Now sometimes you've gotta move your body first for your brain and your heart and your spirit to catch up. You gotta clap, you gotta raise your voice, you gotta do that before you get on stage. Do that in the green room. Do whatever you gotta do to give yourself the best, um, chance of really feeling it and believing it when you're on stage, because the best way to make someone hungry is to eat in front of them.
Mm.
Eddie James said that. That's the best advice I've ever gotten when it comes to leading worship. That if they see you dining with God, that's what's going to lead them to want to do the same thing. Not if they see you smile and with your eyes open and you're like doing the right little exhortation lines in between things, just because you are putting it on, because that's what a good worship leader does, speaking from experience.
Yeah.
That's not as attractive as when you're genuinely doing all of those things
Mm.
from the source of dining with the Lord.
I chuckled when you said with your eyes open because I was a production director at a spot to where I kid you not, if someone new or a guest came and they had their eyes closed, like it was talked about in our debrief meeting the next Monday. It's like, the only thing is the eyes were closed during worship. And so that brought me right back. I don't know if that was a PTSD response, but that brought me right back to that moment, of like, the closed eyes during worship. How can a singer or a musician tell when they're performing emotion instead of living that emotion? Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense, and, this is just my opinion, because sometimes it feels like no matter what you do, you're still in a terrible mood when it starts and it's
Mm.
go time and, um, the click is started and the guide says verse 1 and, you gotta sing, and still there is no option of blank, even if you feel bad, you can't show that on your face. What I'm saying is do everything in your power before that happens to get in a right mind. So, when you're leading worship and you are a shell and you are putting it on versus when you are focused and you are emotionally connected to what you're singing and you feel from a genuine place. The
Mm.
goal is to always get to that genuine place. And if you feel like crap, the work is in the green room. The work is in the morning when you're getting there, and it's hard work, man. And here's the thing, if you don't do it, most likely no one's gonna say anything.
Mhm.
It's not gonna get talked about. It's not like you're going on and it's obvious and it's a train wreck. It's not a train wreck. A bunch of churches and a bunch of worship leaders do it every single Sunday, and everything's working out for it. You know what I
Mm.
mean?
Mm.
So, um you know, I mean, from just personal experience, for years, that's all I did was just put on the face. And for me, it was a motivation of, man, I hope I'm doing this right. I hope everyone else is approving of the way that I'm leading worship. That was it
Mm.
for me for years. I like 2 or 3 years, after Idol and, like, probably, I mean, let's see, what's 26? Probably between 2022 and 2024, 25, beginning of 25. That's all I had. So I'm speaking from experience.
That's really, really good. I want to run a concept by you and get your input on it. So when we would coach worship leaders or volunteers, this was at it was a pretty large church, multi-sites, and 5 services on a weekend and that whole thing. So resources were there. There was a bar for worship and talent that was at a certain level. And in terms of trying to coach authenticity or coach a relationship or coach exactly what you're talking about, the internal work before you ever step on stage or before you sing the songs, a big thread that we would try to use would be coaching people to tie their story to the song that they're singing and the music that they're singing. So we've asked that one question: how has God actually shown up in your story in this way before anyone ever steps on a stage or as a set list are rolling out, like team equip nights? That was the biggest question we would ask. Like, one, do you believe that that's a tool that can be used? And two, if so, how would you personally connect your story to what you're singing in worship?
Yeah, 100%. That is the method that I go to, and coach myself. Exactly what you just said. What does this mean to you? And actually, I use the same questions that I've been taught to ask in acting when I'm approaching a scene, when I'm approaching a song.
Mm,
So, what is this? Instead of scene, I'll just say song. What is this song about? You need to be able to tell me in one sentence what this song's about. If you don't, okay, cool. Let's start there.
mm,
Um, 2, read through the lyrics and make sure you know what everything means. Just those 2 things alone, not even connecting it to your personal story yet. Just you'd be shocked, maybe you wouldn't, at how many people could not answer those 2 questions about
mm,
any song that they're leading. There are you could bring up a phrase. I remember I was coaching a guy who was singing, um, "Christ is my firm foundation,"
mm.
and he sounded like $1,000,000. Was fantastic, very talented, and just I'm a fan of his voice. And I finished, I was like, "Sweet." And I'm thinking in my head, I don't have anything technical to coach him on. And so I just asked him, um, "What do you mean when you say Christ is your firm foundation? What do you mean by that?" And he was like, hmm." I was like, "Oh, this is the first time you've thought of that." And he's like, "Yeah, I never really thought of that." All right. There's there's a pain point for us here. Like there's a point that has to be fixed. And even if he just said, "Well, he's the rock on which I stand." It's like he's the or just said that in a different way. It's like, "Well, he's my firm foundation. He's where everything is built." Everything's built on Christ in your life? Tell me more.
Mm,
How is that? Everything like what? And what has that done? Um, he had nothing, you know? So just doing those 2 things will revolutionize a worship leader. If they just, "What is this song about?" And they can say it, what the song's about in like a thesis statement, like 1 or 2 sentences. And then 2, make sure you know what all the words mean. And they can mean different things to different people.
yeah.
Um, and then 3, who is this song about? And most of the time people would be like, "Well, every song's about God." But that's that's not necessarily true. Some songs are about God and all they're doing is like you would see in the Bible, like lauding him praising him, exalting him, saying how great he is. There's all kinds of examples of that in the Bible. That's about God. Some songs are about me. When I'm singing, I give myself away.
Hmm.
I'm giving myself away to God, but the song's about me. There might be a song that I can't relate to very strongly, or I can kind of, like Reckless Love. I remember singing that and thinking back on my life about how he's relentlessly pursued me. Yeah, I'm sure he has, and that's great. And I could go deep there and then feel that, and that would be the way I sing the song, and I'd connect with that, and everything would be great. But also, when I was leading that song, my mom had just
Hmm.
found God for the first time, and it changed her life at, you know, 50 something. And then when I would think about her with those lyrics, as if singing from her perspective, oh, buddy, the passion and
Hmm.
the connection that I had to that song when I made the song about her, different world. Because we are set free, we overcome and we're set free by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony. Our testimony. That means your testimony,
Hmm.
my testimony, my mom's testimony. So sometimes we can connect to a song by thinking of our friend or a family member's testimony or a story we've heard of another testimony. So who's the song about? Um,
Hmm.
what is this song saying? What is this song about in one or two sentences? And what do all the words mean, and make sure they all mean something to you? And then one exercise that I do to really hammer this home is I will journal. If I'm struggling to connect to a song, I'll write the first line and then I will journal about that one line and how it relates to me or how it relates to my mom or
Hmm.
how it relates to God and my experience with him in my life. Second line, I do the same thing. And when I'm done, I'll have 10 pages of thoughts and journaling moments with every single line has this little paragraph underneath. And man, if I'm asked to say something before the song starts, I got plenty of stuff. If I'm
Hmm.
asked to pray afterwards, I got plenty of stuff to talk about. If I'm asked to do a devotion in the green room, I got plenty of stuff to talk about. That's how deep we should be connected to the songs that we're singing. And if we are, we don't have to worry about being like, make sure I'm focused, make sure I'm authentic. We don't even have to think about that stuff because we're already in the right place.
Really, really, really good stuff. I want to shift gears a little bit to kind of the technical fundamentals of singing a little bit. I've seen a lot of volunteers in church. They sign up to sing. Maybe they have a gift, maybe they have a calling, maybe it's none of those things, but they're passionate about it. And all of a sudden, they've auditioned in some form or fashion, and now they're on the worship team and they're singing as a background vocalist, whatever that means. And they show up probably thinking like, for sure there's going to be some training and some resources, and a lot of churches do this well, but a lot that you would expect to do it really well like don't at all. So from the front of house perspective, I see the same thing over and over again, or I hear it. Low notes will disappear on the lower register, high notes explode. Both of those, pitch gets a little flat. On the high note specifically, tone becomes harsh. And
Yes.
then from a front of house perspective at audio, I'm like hacking away all these details of somebody's vocal, and now it doesn't even represent who they are, just to get it to be pleasant to listen to for a congregation to be able to worship to without like wincing at it. So what is it that's actually happening there?
Yeah, there are a couple culprits here that cause this, and it's incredibly common. Um, like you said, uh, breath support. 95% of every vocal issue is a breath problem, whether that's tone or pitch or resonance or cracking or whatever it is. 95% of the time, it's a breath issue. So when we talk, we're really just getting enough air and um, the way that we prepare to make noise is is just to talk, just to make noise. I don't have to have crazy control in dynamics to speak the sentence that I'm speaking right now. It's all pretty much the same. Then we get to sing and we do the same mechanism of breathing. And it actually has to be a totally different mechanism of breathing, totally different way. And you have to breathe deep down into the bottom of your lungs. And it's wild to think that you can actually select which part of your lungs that you inflate, but
Mm.
your lungs aren't balloons. They're tiny little they're sponges with tiny little alveoli, which basically you can think of just like the material of a sponge. And you can inflate the bottom or the top or the middle
Mm.
or all of it, and you can choose. And so if you think about keeping your shoulders down where they don't move at all, and then taking a deep breath, your body will force itself to breathe and fill the bottom of your lungs. Why that's important? Yeah, just like that. And you
Yeah.
can very easily tell. All you have to do, especially on like Zoom calls or like this, is if you're breathing, I shouldn't even be able to tell you're breathing if you're doing it right.
Mm.
Stomach should be coming out. The reason why that is so effective is because all of the muscles that are responsible for exhaling, which is the vehicle of vocal power, they're all surrounding the bottom part of your lungs. So just like when you're trying to squeeze out the last bit of toothpaste in a toothpaste tube, you're trying to get the toothpaste all the way to the end, and then you squeeze where the toothpaste is. That's what's actually going to get it to come out most effectively. The same thing here. You're putting all your air in the bottom of your lungs, and that's where your muscles are that constrict your lungs to make the most air, give you the most power. And that's when just showing people that I've consistently will improve their range by like a step or maybe a step and a
Mm.
half, um, and increase their stamina by like 300%. It's just that just that alone
Yeah.
will change the tone of their higher notes, and yeah, we'll fix a lot of those problems.
If someone's never been professionally trained, what is one like pitch fundamental that they should remember?
What I tell people is the preparation that you need to warm up your pitch basically, um, because singing with good pitch is just singing with good intervals. So if I'm singing, "Mary had a little lamb," I'm
Mm.
singing with good pitch when I'm jumping from Mary, and I land straight in the center of that note. That's how we sing with good pitch. That's all about intervals. So I would say
Mm.
first thing you have to do, and this could be coaching, this could be just self-assessment, hopefully self-assessment, but if it's not working, then you need someone to help you. Know what the right pitch sounds like and have a high standard to reach that, the center of the pitch. Not the top part of it, not the bottom part of it, straight in the center of the pitch. What does that sound like? And sometimes you need someone to say, "That's not it." In practice, not just, "Hey, I heard you sing and you're flat and your pitch
Right.
sucks." Not like that. To show you what it sounds like. And I've coached people where I'm literally like,
Mm.
"Oh, little higher. Oh, too high, little lower." I mean, that kind of a thing. You
Mm.
just do it yourself. But if you need a coach, that's what it looks like. And then once you're there, stay there and take note of what that feels like, what it sounds like, and tell yourself, "That's the note. Not a cent higher or lower. That's the note." And now we jump to the next one and we do the same thing until we jump right into the center of the next note. Not like we're jumping jumping from this stone to this stone and then we're wobbling and then no, how do we actually jump from here to here with perfect balance right in the center of the note? And it's that practice of slow motion singing where I'm going, Mary had. See, that had for me was just a tab sharp. So then I'm gonna go back. We had. That felt way better. So after I do that slow motion interval training, when I sing at full speed, it's a world of difference.
Mm.
And then it's again, it's focus and knowing like that's my goal. Most people don't have a goal when they're singing as far as pitch goes. They're just singing, and if it sounds bad, someone will tell them, and if it doesn't sound awful, then no one will say anything, and then that's the standard. It's about putting yourself to a higher standard with pitch.
Man, that's incredible. I think for me in audio, I for the longest time in my career, and I wish I knew this, it probably applies to vocalists as well. I did not have a goal of what I wanted the final mix to sound like.
Mm,
I just wanted every instrument, so we're going through sound check, and I'm checking the kick drum. I just wanted every instrument to sound good by itself, and then when I mix them all together, I'm like, I
mm,
think is this right?" So probably like, a similar thing, you have to have an end goal in mind before you even start practicing. Something that came to mind is when bankers or when you're trying to find counterfeit bills, you just study the real bill over and over again. I feel like that's kind of what you're talking about the center of the pitch, the center of the note. It is you know what that is, so that way you know when you're off of it. How can someone and then we move on to next, but this is it's really, really good stuff, and I'm thinking about, like, teams that I've worked with in the past just eating this up. But how can somebody train their ear if they don't know what the center of that note is? Is it like a piano app? Is it listening to demo tracks over and over? Or how do you do that thing?
yeah, piano, I would say, is a primary instrument there. Piano or any type of, um, instrument where you can push a button basically or a piano key, whether that's a synth, like a sine wave, something really smooth, or a piano note, but something that is consistent and
Mhm.
perfect. Um, and then try to match that exactly, and then jump to the next note. And most people won't do that. They think it's too elementary. They think, do the best singers sing this? I don't know. I do. I
Mm.
do for sure. That's like one of the most pivotal warm ups that I do that I would attach to singing well for me. When I've sung great, it's because I've literally sat with a piano or in my head heard the piano and walked like a toddler through this melody. That's what it takes. And yeah, piano is the primary thing. And if someone's not quite getting it there and they think they're on and they're not sure if they're on or if that's the right, just have a friend who has a good ear to just walk you through. And again, it feels elementary and it even feels like I must be tone deaf if I have to go to this. Like, no, 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 no. You're just setting the right standard. It's just you just have to know what it looks like, what it sounds like. You have to, and if you ignore it, you're just gonna be the person that doesn't sing on pitch, and then everyone, like, is afraid to tell you.
Yeah, so no shame in going back and making sure that your foundation is completely spot on because you're on stage and there's so much room for error. And I feel like if your foundation is 5% off while you're singing live and performing that thing, it's exponential. You're 50 or whatever. You know what I mean? Like it's so
Mhm.
hard to
Sure.
wrap everything around. So your baseline has to be spot on. Really quick, we talked about fundamental for pitch, listening through that. What is if someone's never been professionally trained, like one quick takeaway that they could practice or one fundamental that they should remember for breath support?
It's gotta be that, your gas pedal is in your gut. It's when you power is just powerful singing is just powerful breathing. That's all that a powerful note is. And the way to the only way that you're gonna do that is breathing into the bottom of your stomach and the bottom of your lungs and pushing out that way, and that takes warm up, breathing warm ups like that, and making sure it's in the right place and practicing until that's second nature when you're singing. I tell myself before I sing, I do that breathing and go, "This is how I sing. This is how I breathe when I sing. This is a singer's breath. I sing and breathe like this." I'm just repeating those things
Mm.
to myself to get those neural pathways solid so that I can deliver um, the best breath when I'm singing.
The self-coaching on that is so important. You wake like, have you heard those, they're like motivational speakers? It's like, "Write this on your bathroom mirror and repeat it to yourself every day," and it feels so dumb and cheesy until you've done it for a month, and you're like, "Oh, now I embody that," you know?
Yep, yep.
It's that neural pathway is stronger than I think we give it credit to. Cool, and so do you have resources on your page, Instagram, for all of this, or is there some other but do you have, like, breath support, pitch, fundamental stuff?
I do.
Sweet.
There's a course called Vocal Foundations that goes over pretty much everything we just talked about. It dips into how I warm up, and you need to warm up 4 or 5 different things apart from your voice. Your mind, your breathing
Mm.
muscles, your facial muscles, your pitch, and then, of course, your vocal cords actually vocalizing. And so, yeah, vocal foundations is the course that I go through
Sweet.
all of
I'm
that.
buying it.
Yeah, oh, good. And
Cool.
yeah, that's all on my Instagram link in bio type of thing.
Sweet.
You just like Clark Beckham School of Music, and I've got music theory stuff there and how to sing runs, um, all all kinds of stuff. My personal warm up, vocal recovery protocol, just being around amazing singers and doing this professionally for 10 years. Um, I've seen I've gone through all the gimmicks. I know what works, I know what doesn't work. I know what
Yeah.
people get really hype on and, like, trend is, like, a really heavy trend that doesn't work and what does, and, basically, these courses are like, "Alright, here's the no fluff stuff that I do." I've gone through all the hard learning for you, like,
Heck
here's
yeah.
the good stuff after, 10 years of doing this.
That perspective is priceless for someone starting out to have dredged through the mire of what doesn't work or isn't as helpful. How important would you say it is to be able to hear yourself well, or a tonal reference or click track in terms of live performance on stage? Where would you kind of weigh being able to hear well? It's probably a very obvious question, but
It's it's absolutely most of the time, it's everything.
Hmm,
Um, there are some times where the mix isn't good and you can't get it right, and for whatever reason, there are restrictions where it just sounds bad in your ears no matter what you do, and you have to almost, like, block everything out, and it's really hard, but it can be done,
hmm,
but typically, if your ears aren't right, it it's really hard to focus on who you're singing about, like, all those things we talked about, my goodness, focus gets way more difficult. I would say, um, the most important thing it depends on it's song related, so there are some songs that I'll be leading and, um, the drummer is my click.
hmm,
There are some songs that I start off and it's maybe just me and pad, and there isn't a rhythmic, like, thing that I can really rely on, and boy, if I get off, I screw everything up. Clicks coming up in that scenario for the whole set. The whole set, like, if I have a moment where I better stay on or for some reason I'm getting off, I clicks coming up, and I'm putting it right right down the center for me. The more you can pan things, the better. Some people just have everything like, "Yeah, whatever, just turn it up if I can't hear it." Um, when there's a ton of different channels coming through and a lot of different noise sources coming through, the more you can move stuff around, the better you're gonna be able to
hmm.
hear. I think that's the most slept on in-ear thing is panning stuff around so it has some room to where you can hear everything better.
Yeah, creating space, giving everything its own lane. I've mixed hundreds of singers over the years at this point, and sometimes, if I'm on monitors, sometimes I'll hit that solo button so that I could listen into that singer's mix exactly, and I'm, like, so apprehensive to hit it because sometimes it's insane. There's no logical reason that the what is in their mix should be in their mix,
Yeah,
and most of those times we're, like, mid-show or mid-worship service or whatever, and it's like, you can make a couple tweaks, but then that's throwing them off even more potentially because they've built their like tonal reference around this thing.
right.
So what would you say you have to hear clearly in your mix to stay in tune? Like, what is your go-to instrument in your in-ear mix that you're like, if everything else sounds bad, just for pitch reference, I'm gonna lock this thing and this has to be good.
Yeah, it's definitely piano for me. A
Mm,
lot of people, it's track, depending on what's in the track, but most of the time there is a pad or synth or something like that in the track that is pretty, um, driving in the pitch of the song or the tonal reference. But for me, it's gonna be the piano player because that's that's where I'm gonna hear the pitch.
Is there anything that you remove from your mix all the time or usually? Like, is there a go-to?
if I feel cluttered at all, I'm taking out pretty much all the vocals except me and anyone else who's leading.
Hmm.
That's the first thing to go if my in-ear mix is a little crowded and I'm, like, struggling. The essentials, like, the non-negotiables, I guess, would be, uh, kick, snare, and hi-hat just for, basically my click. If the drummer can be my click, it feels so much better than a "ka, ka, ka, ka,"
Hmm.
like, just driving into my ears. And the piano and everything else is gravy. Everything else, I'm gonna pan and move around and stuff, but my vocal, the piano, and then, the drums, like kick, snare, hat, those are, like, I have to have those. And if the kick, snare, hat isn't working or whatever, then it's the click. It's one of those 2 things that are very prominent. And then, of course, the guide, if I
Hmm.
don't know, like, if I really need the guide, if I'm missing a cue or something like that, I'll crank the guide up. One thing that I think I've had a whole worship set fall apart, emotionally and spiritually because of this one thing in my mix, and it's not even as much as like an in-ear, like, mix, like, whether it's too loud or quiet, but whoever's on the talk back, if they are not in tune with the moment, and if they are not reverent of the moment, dude, it is my biggest pet peeve. Like, if someone's on the talk back, like, laughing and making jokes, um, during worship, especially during, like, if it's, like, an upbeat, exciting song and they whatever, but if we're in a moment of, like, altar call or it's, like, and I'm trying to figure out, like, where we should we go, and they're screaming in the talk back trying to tell, like, the bass player to do something and they don't have any tact. I wanna, like, rip my ears out and, like, walk off the stage, like, it is so detrimental.
100%. I think, it's dangerous for a lot of even myself. We also have talkbacks. So with great power comes great responsibility. It's like, yes, that is a tool that I could communicate to the band with in an absolute like worst case scenario. If someone's mic is on and they're about to sing in 5 seconds, I'll just say, "Hey, vocal 5, your mic's on," like really quick,
Yeah.
but never in the middle of the thing doing it. We have a phenomenal MD at our church who, like you said, in those up moments, he is the hype man on stage. And I've seen it used in a good way to where he's like, "Hey guys, remember why we're doing this. Remember why we engage," or used really well ahead of service. Like, "Hey, find a person in your section and think about how their story relates to what we're doing right now for
Oh,
like
that's
the
good.
bass player to do." It was so like I've seen it used really good, but it could be such a distraction for folks on stage too. If you said, like you said, if there's not tact and there's not like emotional intelligence there, it could be
Mhm.
a derailing thing. Those conversations to address that should happen like immediately. For anyone listening with that question, like, should I address this? Yes, absolutely address this.
Even the
Um,
even the tone of their voice.
Even tone
Like,
of voice.
if you
And
gotta say something and it's in the middle of the thing, if you need to say it, you can say it as long as you can tell, like, you're being reverent for the, um, "Hey, we don't have lyrics for so and so," like, "Hey, we need these lyrics," or, "Hey, Joel's bass just went out," and, like, say what you need to say,
yeah,
but keep it there, not like, "Ah, da, ba, ba, ba," like, in this sweet moment. It's oh gosh.
100%. It's a tool to be used very intentionally. Last question on this one is how can a vocalist or anyone on stage, if they're having mix issues, advocate for their mix and ask for help without sounding like difficult? I know there's language around diva. I don't want to be a diva, so I don't want to. It's like, please, I need you to be able to hear so that you could do what you're called to do. How can they like approach that?
Yeah, I would just say, like, with with as with as much humility, and, like, defer to the mixing engineer and just be like, "This is what I'm hearing. Can you listen to my mix real quick and see?" Because 'Cause I've seen so many standoffs
Same.
with singers to in-ear monitors of, like, "I can't hear myself," and then they're like, "Well, you're all the way up." That's not the right answer in my opinion,
It's
for
not.
the mixing engineer. Like, even if you're listening and you're like, "My ears are bleeding because 'cause they're so loud." It's not the right answer. Like,
Yeah.
tell them like, "Well, you could try this, or I can try this. You can try to pan other things. You can try to turn everything else down. Um, mic placement, mic technique, where you're at. Maybe more compression in their ears so that they can hear themselves when they're quiet and they can hear themselves when they're loud. And you can really crank up the master to their vocal. If the compression is up enough, like help them out in those ways. The best mixing engineers and the best singers with this topic that I've witnessed are always cool and relaxed and not they're not there are a lot of insecurities in the whole world, and a lot of
Yeah.
mixing engineers have insecurities, a lot of singers have insecurities. This is not the place for insecurities to come out, where it's time to take your stand on how you know what you're doing and the singer's crazy. Like, "No, no, 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 no," or vice versa. "You know what you're doing and the mixing engineer's awful." "No, no, 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 no." Just communicate clearly and ask, "What do you think I should do? What do you think I should do?" Turn your pack up. "Oh, my pack's pretty loud. It's not master. I wonder if," and just stay in that place and you guys can talk through things. But one thing I do hear all the time is I can't hear myself. I can't hear myself.
Hmm.
Can't hear myself. And um usually, and I struggle with this too sometimes, but usually I've found that when I'm really quiet, I can't hear myself. When I'm really loud, I'm too loud. And so whether that's compression or just me accepting like, all right, I'm just not gonna hear myself super well when I'm soft. I've gotta use my inner ear that can kinda hear myself
Hmm.
with my ears plugged, you know? Um, I don't know, what do you think? What have you had success with when in those situations?
I think you're spot on. Everything that we're talking about, I'm trying to coach myself on all the time, is asking questions, seek to understand, and saying, "Hey, like, there's such a big difference between, hey, I need this thing and this is what's going on versus, hey, I'm not able to hear myself. Can you listen in and tell me what you think about the mix?" And then for a mix engineer, not to jump to conclusions like, well, I soloed it and it's making my ears bleed. So then that means you're hearing the same exact thing. I'm going to ask questions to that musician or that vocalist. Hey, how is the seal for your ears? Does it actually feel like your ears are plugged when your in ears are in? Because if not, you're not going to get any volume out of that. So starting at the fundamental of like, let's make sure that the one, if they're custom molds, that they're not plugged. Two, if they're universals and they're foam, that they're actually in your ear canal correctly so that they're blocking all the outside ambient noise. That's been the biggest thing that I found
Mm,
is the in-ears are not inserted correctly. It should be as if when you have in-ears in, it should be as if you have your fingers in your ears and they're completely plugged to outside noise, unless you have a special type of in-ear that has like a vent that's a little bit different. But for all the universals, it should be like your fingers are in your ears plugging them. If not, you're not ever going to be able to get that loud enough and actually hear yourself because you have all of this stage noise also bleeding in there. So that's a big thing. And then I'll just kind of like do some investigative questioning, like you said, just asking questions. Okay, where's your pack at? Instead of jumping to conclusions, well, I'll just turn your master up and do the thing. Hey, where's your master at if you're not hearing well. And then I'm kind of looking at the gain stage for the pack. If everything is really, really hot going into their mix, there's a limiter. And so the definition in the mix is
mm,
now gone. Everything, essentially, if everything is all the way up, then everything is at the same exact volume, no matter how lightly someone is playing, because it's hitting a downstage limiter in the pack for protection of the ear in the pack. So I think what you said is perfect. Just anchoring on asking questions and seeking to understand the other person's perspective before jumping to conclusions has changed my whole career and everything I've done, even
wow.
in personal conversations with friends. Jumping on to vocal tuning here, there's this belief in church that vocal tuning is either like, and maybe this is in the whole world, but there's this belief that vocal tuning is either magic or in the church world, it's like the devil and should never be used.
Yeah.
For me, from a front of house perspective, relying on that tool for less experienced vocals has been, great to make everything cohesive. But I found with certain vocals that tuning can actually make it worse and that I'll have to turn the tuner off. Can you fix a bad vocal with pitch correction?
No. I'm gonna say no on that one. Pitch correction, uh, like live is, in my opinion, awesome. I am like, especially for, live streaming.
Yeah.
I don't know if I've ever heard anybody ever sound great in a live worship setting with a congregation with all the band noise really going for it passionately, sound good on a straight from the board like mix with no tuning help in a live stream off a computer. Because we sing on pitch, it's determined on what we hear, and
Hmm.
then we decide like where we're going to place our note for that pitch. What you hear in the room or even in your ears is going to be completely different than what makes it all the way to the computer for a live stream every time. So in in those settings, like pitch is great, but it is not a fix
Hmm.
all because one, it if you're way off, um, it's just gonna correct the wrong note. Like it's gonna pull you to an F when you're supposed to be singing an E. So that's one thing. You have to be really careful. You have to be singing on pitch because if you're singing like if you're in the key of C and you're singing a G and you're a little flat or you're a little sharp, it won't correct you to G flat or G sharp if it's the tuning's like locked into the key. So you're pretty you'd have to be really off for it to put you to the wrong note. But if you're singing an F or an E or a C or a B, 4 of the 7 notes that you could be singing, you gotta be on. Because if you're off just a little and you're a little bit closer to the half step that's within the key, it'll correct to that, and it'll either correct to that and be wrong, or it'll correct and jump back and forth, which is not great. Um, and then, of course, it's manipulating the tone of your voice no matter what.
Hmm.
If it's a G and you're kind of flat, but it's correcting you, it's still changing the tone of your voice a little bit, and it can sound a little um, inhuman, even with really like the pitch correction speed dialed in really well. So you
Yeah.
got to sing on no matter what. The pitch correction is it's really polish.
Yeah.
Um, and then it's a saving grace in live streaming. But I'm telling you, you gotta sing with great pitch for the pitch correction to work.
Yeah, I've seen pitch work, like pitch correction work the absolute best. Like it almost makes the biggest difference when the singer is phenomenal. And then
Yes.
it's that extra step of like, whoa, this is locked. Versus if someone is, I don't know what the measurement is, but say they're 25% off and it's having to do more work to bring them to center, it starts to sound artificial. Even like you said, even if you have your speed and your tuning references dialed in correctly, it's still the further off you are from that center note, like you said earlier, the further that tuner has to work, and then it starts sounding robotic, artificial, really hard tuned. Do you ever, when you're thinking about singing through tuners, and usually this is a back of mind thing for people, it's not something that they're thinking about all the time, but when you're thinking about singing through tuners, do you ever simplify phrasing or runs or even think about, oh, this note is not in the scale of the song, so I'm going to simplify that, or let know somebody know, those things, or
Yeah,
how deep do you get with that?
I do. So I know, and this getting a little nerdy.
I like that.
So diatonic is a term that means within the key. Non-diatonic means outside of the key. So I know that if I know when I'm singing a non-diatonic note, whether it's in the melody or whether, which it's usually not, or whether um, there's a non-diatonic chord being played that I would like to do a run on that accentuates that non-diatonic note in that chord. That's really pretty, but the tuning's not gonna let you do it
Hmm.
unless you tell the person, "Hey, I need you to bypass on the tuning, A flat needs to be bypassed because 'cause I'm singing an A flat on here." And some people might be listening and be like, "What? How am I supposed to know?" If you don't know, um, it's probably not something you have to worry about because it's very rare.
Mhm.
I'm like one of the only people that I know in church settings that has to ask that question because I'm just the guy that does weird stuff like that. It's not something you have to think about. But if you do runs and if you do like gospel runs, like Kim Burrell Jasmine Sullivan type notes like, "Hey," weird non-diatonic things that make people go, "Ooh," like that. You have to know what notes you're singing because they have to be allowed in the pitch correction or it is gonna sound awful.
To me, it sounds like hell on earth. It's like, what just happened in the room? To speak back to your very first point of like music being so beautiful and this gift, you take that to a completely different place and it's like, what is that? You know, those two
Yeah.
notes with what is being played on, it's like, it is crazy to contrast what's being played on stage. You hit on mic technique a little bit earlier. I want to just talk about that for a brief sec and then a follow up question. I'll let you get the heck out of here. But I've done this for years, told singers just to eat the mic, and I've heard all kinds of audio guys tell singers, "Hey, just eat the mic," because the contrast of that is that the mic is, you know, a foot away from their mouth, which we don't want. So we've defaulted saying, "Eat the mic," and I think a lot of times that can be the wrong advice. What do most vocalists misunderstand about mic technique, or most front of house guys misunderstand about mic technique? I believe that good mic technique is a form of like self mixing yourself.
I would agree with that. I think you get a lot of singers who are shy, especially if they're background vocalists and they're not leading anything at all. And whatever their mix is in their ear, they are self-mixing before the mix is here, and they start to hear themselves and they get nervous, or they hear
Mhm.
themselves in the house and they get nervous. So they're trying to self-mix what they think is right amount of volume by where their mic is, and that's not good because then, like you said, then you've got stage noise coming in, you gotta crank it, and there's feedback, and then they're looking at you, but it's not your fault, it's because the singer. So
Wait, what did you say? Can you say that again? It's not whose fault?
yeah, feedback is often not the engineer's fault.
It can always be the
Uh,
engineer's fault. That was just music to my ears, thank you.
um, and so I I personally here's a mic.
Yeah,
I would never do it with this mic.
for
Pretend
sure.
like an SM58 or like a normal mic. I just sit it right here. My default is I'm sitting it right here on my chin and it's touching the bottom lip, my bottom lip right here. And this is when I'm singing in like a speaking voice kind of a volume. And then if I really start cranking, I bring it out to here. And that's about as far as I'll go
Well,
because
what inch
that's
that's
probably
about
like 2.5.
yeah, about 2.5 inches is your max when you're ripping at loudest volume.
Maybe, yeah, yeah. I'd say 3 inches is the max distance. I can't stand I can't stand when singers do it too much on a big note because we don't have the note anymore. The note's
Yeah.
gone. It's like, "Ba ba 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 da." It's like, "Why are you now we can't hear you." I
Yep.
hate when singers do that. So yeah, I eat the mic even when I'm, like, speaking, like, preaching or something, the mic sits right here for me, and I pretty much eat the mic, and then I might, like I said, maybe 3 inches, maybe, like, right here if I'm really going for it. Um, but yeah, you gotta start there, and if it's way too loud, great. That's like a mixing job, not
Yep.
your mic placement. This should always be a constant in my opinion, and then, like you said, it's also, you do not wanna eat the mic when you're singing at the top of your lungs. Bad, 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 sounds awful. It makes it impossible for I've heard singers that do that, and what's funny is, like, my wife, who has no musical background, will be like, "Golly, she was awful." And I'm like, "Actually, she's killing it. She's just got the mic she's eating the mic and singing way too loud into that mic. Her mic placement's awful. She's actually really great. It's just very unpleasant when she does that."
So improper mic technique can make an amazing vocalist sound awful to the untrained ear if you don't know the technique behind it. Do you think we talked earlier about that ice picky, like high octave? Do you think eating the mic when you're belting or just singing at the top of your lungs contributes to that as well?
In chest voice, yes.
Yeah.
There's 2 different resonants that you can access when you are belting. It's chest voice, which is our speaking voice. That's what we yell in. It's
Hmm.
when you push past where it sounds good, you're yelling, and then it's like, "Ouch, this hurts." Then above that is mixed voice. That is the gold of belting high,
Hmm.
really high notes. You listen to Tori Kelly, you listen to Stevie Wonder, you listen to Bruno Mars, you listen to Brian McKnight. Any belting high note they do is like this perfect mixed voice. That you can actually get pretty tight into them because the output is actually not very much. If you actually saw, like, if you recorded it on Logic, like when I'm like mixing my own vocal or recording my own vocal, I can be in a mixed belt that sounds like a train, and you look and it's pretty small. Like the actual
Waveform,
waveform,
same as your other
pretty
softer
small.
stuff.
And then I belt something in chest that does not, it gets lost in the mix and it's not as piercing at all. It's 3 times as fat, like,
Wow.
as big, and so mixed voice is kind of like a cheat code where you could I'm still gonna back off a little bit, but it's much more pleasant on the ears, but
Hmm.
I will say 100%, you said it very well, improper mic placement and technique can make a fantastic singer sound intolerable to the untrained ear or to
Yeah.
any ear. I just know why, and my wife doesn't know why. They just think they're awful.
You can call that out easily versus, "Oh, that thing is just bad. That person is a bad singer." So, man, mic technique, yeah. Everything that you said, I'm like, "Oh, it's music to my ears." Like, "Hey, 3 inches away." There's this if anyone listening is trying to get some, like, scientific backing behind this, look up proximity effect. It basically states that with a microphone diaphragm, every doubling of distance, lowers the output by, like, half or something like that into the mic, and then it shapes that frequency of that microphone. So when you pull away, the voice gets thinner. When you're closer, you have this nice, full, warm vocal. So look into that if you're listening. Clark, all of this has been phenomenal. Thank you so much for your time and just the clarity that you gave behind this. For me, this was one of the interviews I look forward to the most of just like, I want to understand this stuff. And you've opened my mind to so much. I'm about to go buy all your courses and study all of it, even though I'm not a vocalist. Do you have one final takeaway? Was there anything that you learned in your career, in your time on this planet, that has unlocked something for you or been a game changer? It doesn't have to relate to any of this. It can relate to this, just anything whatsoever that was like, I'm going to remember that forever.
Yeah, yeah, actually, I was signed to Quincy Jones Production, his management, uh, he had a roster of artists that his management company managed, and he was very present to us, as a friend, as just a person, like, he wanted you to come over, and he wanted to talk, and he wanted to learn about you, he wanted to spend time with you, um, on that, like, social, personal level, and when I got
Mm,
to spend a lot of time with him, um, I realized that I think the secret to his success, and he's arguably the most successful music professional of all time, and I noticed that the common theme and the foundation of everything that he did and what made him different was not his musical ideas as much as it was a deep adoration for people, for just
mm,
mankind. He loved people so much and so well, and it was for me, it was a moment of, "Man, I sing a lot better when I'm really, like, looking at the crowd, looking at the audience, whether I'm in church or not, and really wanting them to have a really great experience, to hear what I'm singing, to
mm,
feel what I'm singing, and I'm thinking of them first." I write way better when I'm thinking of, "Man, I want whoever listens to this to really feel this song." And he said that, um, ego is just an overdressed insecurity, and it can lead to I'm singing or I'm writing or I'm recording for people to approve of me or to think
mm,
I'm great or to get money or to be successful. And he said that when you write like that, he said God walks out of the room
mm.
and you've just lost your most potent, heart-piercing element, which is God. And this is a longer discussion for another time, but I believe um, music is an element of the word, the logos of God. And it applies to that verse that talks about the word of God being sharper than any two-edged sword, piercing to between through joint and marrow to the depths of our hearts. Like that's what music can do. But if it's self-seeking, God can't be in that. And then all of a sudden it's it's the knife is dull.
Hmm.
You can be like, yeah, that's great, but it doesn't touch you, doesn't move you. So really just seeing how Quincy cared about other people and loved people, and that really drove his art, showed me like that's the optimal way to make art.
Yeah, that's incredible. Can you say that line again? Ego is.
Ego is an overdressed insecurity, is a Quincy Jones quote.
Well, man, I can say from, stalking you on Instagram for the last couple years, it's pretty obvious and apparent that you've embodied what that time with Quincy did for you, not so that you can have a platform or that you can get gigs, but so that you can help people experience something bigger than themselves. And so for me, it was like, man, having you on has been an absolute treat. You are embodying that flawlessly. So that's a wrap for this first episode. I'm really excited for this one to come out. Thank you so much for joining us. Where can people find you and find resources for everything we talked about?
Instagram, just Clark Beckham on Instagram. You can get access to my courses, my booking thing for speaking events, for singing events, sing at everything. And then clarkbeckham.com is another resource for like booking, email, stuff like that.
Well, thanks so much.
All right, man. Thanks for having me on. This was awesome.